Hi there, and welcome back to Reimagined Energy, where we explore fresh ideas and bold solutions shaping Canada's energy future. Today, we have an organization that knows how to turn trash into transformation. Divert Nova Scotia is leading the charge in waste reduction and resource recovery, helping Nova Scotians rethink what we throw away and why it matters to our low carbon future. Basically, how simple actions can lead to a big environmental impact. Let's dive into it. Hi, Kathryn. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're with Divert Nova Scotia. So let's start things off to those who aren't quite aware, like who is, Divert and how does your mission, to reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, all of these resources, how does it align with the province's broader goals for a low carbon future? That's the second part. So tell us who you are first.
So, Divert Nova Scotia is a not-for-profit. We were formed in the 90s from Nova Scotia government's solid waste regulations. So, we're not a government organization, but we work very closely with Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change. And we champion the province to reduce, reuse, recycle, and live in sustainable ways. So, we run a series of recycling programs, stewardship programs, and we also do a lot of education and awareness initiatives. And we have a lot of partnerships with external organizations, and we try to support these organizations and businesses to incorporate innovative solutions to waste management. So we contribute to the province's goal of low carbon in pretty much the recycling programs that we run. It reduces a lot of greenhouse gases and carbon, as well as our education and support for other businesses and organizations. So we try to educate about the benefits and also about how to reduce and reuse and recycle, which then in turn reduces the amount of carbon in our atmosphere.
Yeah. All of that. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more on the education side. But so how can you share with us how Divert Nova Scotia, your recycling programs, they've contributed to, reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the province. So give us some examples of what stands out in your mind.
Well, the numbers are really quite impressive. So Nova Scotia does a great job recycling, and particularly the beverage container. So our two programs, our recycling programs that we as Divert run, are the refundable beverage containers. So the Enviro depots across the province. So there's 77 of them across the province. So those are locally owned businesses that people take their beverage containers back. Anything that you pay a deposit on, you can take it back to the Enviro depot and get 5 cents to 10 cents back. And so the numbers that go through there. So our recovery rate is about 80%, a little under 80%. So that's the number of beverage containers sold in the province. About 80% actually go through the Enviro depot and the refundable beverage container network.
Like you're saying, 80% of the products on the shelves end up back at the Enviro depot? That's a pretty high number.
Yes. Very high numbers. Nova Scotians, we do a great job.
Yeah.
So we should be very proud of that. And then
be.
that actually, it adds up to, the number is like way bigger than what I ever thought it would be before I started working here, but it's 430 million a year. So that's the number of containers that are go through our system and are recycled every year. So we also do the used tire program. So that's any road tires in the province. They can be returned to a garage or a retailer 4 at a time. And then we look after the collection and the recycling of those. So that works out to 1.3 million tires a year are recycled.
Awesome. Just for this province. That's amazing.
Just for this province. So that equals, it's like a random number that probably doesn't mean too much, but it's about 50,000 tons of greenhouse gases for both.
That's really good. Yeah.
And so we do the calculations to figure out what that actually means. So it's about like 7,300 cars being taken off the road each year. So like with carbon pricing, that's $1.5 million carbon pricing kind of equates. So there is a big, just the recycling programs themselves, there's a big impact on greenhouse gas and carbon.
That is a lot. That is really
Yeah.
awesome.
It's a lot of numbers, but it
Yeah,
does, yeah, it gives you a bit of the scale that we're
it
working on.
does. For a small province like Nova Scotia, I think it's really impactful. What role does Divert Nova Scotia play in supporting like community-led projects? Events, litter pickup events, and how do you do your outreach to community?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's actually the main part of my job. So I don't do a lot with the operations side. So I do more of the outreach and the partnerships and working with other organizations.
Nice.
So we work a lot. We provide funding to, or we just partner with, or a combination of both, a lot of like-minded organizations. So the Clean Foundation, they have educational programming in schools, and an intern program that we help provide funding for interns to get jobs in waste management. We also work with Coastal Action, and they run two litter cleanup programs in the province. So Adopt a Highway, a program, and the Great Nova Scotia Pick Me Up. And so those are large volunteer-led pickups and cleanups across the province. So they're really busy this time of year. So we provide funding to them so they can buy supplies, update their maps, and have a coordinator to help volunteers with their cleanups.
Mm-hmm.
And we also do a lot of educational, like with our social media about litter, and work with municipalities on implementing litter reduction initiatives. So, like eye catching bins and things like that to try to prevent litter. There's a lot of other organizations really cool. So, 4 H Nova Scotia, we've partnered with them. It's a rural organization in Nova Scotia for youth. So they have a speech competition that every 4-H member has to participate in. So we offer a divert specific speech competition and give them some prizes if they
Wow.
get up to the provincial level.
Yeah.
And so it's a combination of funding organizations to do boots on the ground work related to waste management, but also working with them to get the message out about the importance of waste management and waste reduction. So
That's awesome.
there's a lot. We work with the Discovery Center. We work with a bunch of different types of organizations.
Wonderful. Well, how that works on the community side, what about the municipality side? Because there's a lot of things to implement, there's a lot of
Yeah.
things how do you work with them?
Yeah. So municipalities, a lot of the management of waste falls on
Mhm.
municipalities, and with education and with the actual logistics of managing waste and collection. So the way that Divert is set up to 70% of our net revenue, we're mandated to provide back to municipalities. So when we have a good financial year, they get a little more money. And it's to help with the management of waste. So we do have specific programs that are delivered to the municipalities, so education and programming that we can talk about a little bit more, but we also provide enforcement funding to help pay for bylaw officers to make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing with their waste.
Mhm.
And then we have something called diversion credits that go to all the municipalities to help cover the costs, because waste is quite expensive,
Yeah.
like the composting and the collection and the communications and everything that's involved. So those that we do provide some funding from our revenue to go directly to municipalities to help them with that.
What about there's the whole culture of sustainability. There's
Mhm.
how do you guys foster that, within the province? Because imagine it's age related. There's children, adults, and
Yes.
seniors, like all different kinds of thinking there's. But what do you guys do about that culture, fostering it?
Yeah. And Nova Scotia, we have a pretty strong culture of
Hmm.
recycling, but recycling only gets you so far. So we're pretty good at recycling, but we really could go a little bit further in our waste reduction and prevention.
Interesting.
But we do, and we incorporate that now more in our message. Along with the recycling message, we do have a strong reduce message.
Hmm.
And we do that in a bunch of different ways. So I'd mentioned the municipal education funding.
Right.
So we pay for waste educators in different municipalities that are available to provide education on everything waste related, as well as waste reduction. And they'll go into schools, they go into businesses, they'll do community outreach events and do like present at Girl Guides and seniors expos, things like that. And
Hmm.
it's all free. So it's provided free because we provide funding for that. And then we also do have a specific focus on school-age children. So we have resources online like lesson plans and activities and everything that's school-based. And so our lesson plans are all curriculum aligned from grade primary up to grade, I think 9 is the highest for the lesson plans.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have things like scholarships for the older groups, older grades. So we're trying to reach every age with different types of messaging. And we're trying to incorporate not just the recycling part, but the overall reduced consumption, the impact on greenhouse gas and climate change, and try to kind of tie waste management in with everything. So it's not just about what goes where, it's about all the other impacts associated with it.
Yeah. And I would imagine, like with the projects that you're working on right now, which I'm curious to know, it's about, the business side of things and reducing greenhouse gases. Because like you said, we all know that, cans are recyclable, glass, plastics. But what projects are you working on now, that stick out for you?
Well, so we talked about the education part, but we
Right.
also offer funding. So funding for innovation. So funding for businesses, academic institutions, municipalities, and other organizations we're trying to drive innovation to waste diversion and waste reduction. So finding different markets or finding different things that you can do with waste products to keep it from the landfill. So our programs range from like if somebody just has an idea and they want to test it in the lab, to if they have like a fully formed product but they need help getting it to market or like scaling up. So we have funding for that, and that's where a lot of really cool innovation, really cool ideas and innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So one example is Oberland Agriscience. So they're based in Halifax, and they take actual organic waste materials, so the green bin cart stuff, but also stuff like pre-consumer waste, so like from grocery stores and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Any byproducts and nutritional supplement types things, and they feed it to black soldier fly, and they to grow larvae, so black soldier fly larvae. And so they do it at an industrial scale, and that larva is then used for feed products for livestock. It's really high in protein with very minimal input. So they're taking a waste product and adding like substantial amount of value to it, and also reducing the footprint of that product. And so creating a lot of ingredients, and it's used in like it's just a high protein, the larva itself, but then also there's products that come from the fly itself, like the shell of the fly itself. And so we provided funding for them to do like to get it to it in large, like test it, and then also some funding to get it at a larger scale. So there's a lot of really cool work. If I encourage you to look at up then, they're really good.
Yeah. This brings a really crazy question, but I'm going to throw you off the loop with, but nematodes, you put them in your lawns. Imagine, I think they're good for grubs or something like that, or grub control, which the raccoons come and they destroy your lawn.
Yes.
As in my case. But, I'm just wondering how, because that would reduce pesticides. That would reduce a lot of contaminants going into the soil and GHP. So would you say that's one of the programs that you would be interested in supporting, or not really?
There has to be a direct link to waste, like solid waste. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it would have to be like a diversion amount, like an amount of, So I think that might be a little like, it would have a great impact, but I don't know if the tie is strong enough to.
It doesn't tie into you guys. Yeah. All right. So what does the future look like for you guys? Like, are there any upcoming projects? Because I hear, there's a new government regulation that's, where you're bringing in kind of like the oversight agency for a lot of projects. So tell everyone a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so there's a recent new regulation pertaining to printed paper and packaging-like products.
Right.
And it's extended producer responsibility, so EPR for PPP. And so that is actually what it is. It puts the onus or the responsibility of covering the cost of recycling packaging on the producers. So the companies that create the packaging, and there's a lot of packaging, that the majority of what goes into our waste streams and recycling streams is things like paper and plastic packaging.
Right.
So that EPR, extended producer responsibility, they cover the cost that's associated with recycling that product. So it is quite expensive. And right now it's the municipalities that cover the cost of the blue bag curbside programs for the recycling. So Divert's new role is the oversight agency. So we didn't do the regulations. That was a provincial regulation, but we've been appointed the oversight agency. So that just means we kind of do tracking of the producers to make sure that what they are saying they're doing and that they're meeting all the requirements associated with that regulation. So we have a monitoring and auditing capacity. So we would gather information from the businesses that are part of the program and just making sure that they meet the requirements that are associated with the regulations. On a high level, that's pretty much what it is.
Right.
But it is quite complicated. It's a complicated process, and it's a brand new regulation. Yeah, it's exciting to see what will come of it, because the big goal of EPR for PPP and making them responsible for paying for the cost of recycling, the idea is that would give them an incentive to reduce the amount of packaging. So instead of the overabundance of packaging, like when you buy a toy or when you buy something like all like extra cardboard and
plastics
over amount, it would drive them to reduce the amount of packaging because they pay by how much packaging they produce, and also increase the recyclability of it. So that's the overall goal of it, but it's exciting to see how it rolls out and what will happen with our waste, the amount of waste that is produced in Nova Scotia.
Wow. No, you see it in a lot of new products. When you're looking at any Nova Scotia product that's going out there, whether it's food related, or you can tell that the packaging looks a little different than it does from something that comes from another country, and which I love. You can tell that a lot of thought's been put into the packaging.
Yeah, that's great to see when they put some thought into how much and really just put the bare minimum amount of packaging.
Exactly. And which is, we all need that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fruits and vegetables, you don't need to have that extra plastic on top. You don't need to have all that packaging.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Kathryn, for joining me today, and learned a lot. Definitely, if anybody's interested and curious about getting involved, maybe, contact you guys, your website, Divert Nova Scotia.
Yes, Divert Nova Scotia, divertns.ca. And we also, I just want to mention, so we are very active on social media, and that's where a lot of our awareness campaigns and any educational material is shared, as well as on our website. We have a learning section that has all of the educational material, but we're also quite active on social media. So I just want to mention that.
Excellent. Well, that's good. It's wonderful. Okay. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on today's episode. A big thank you to Divert Nova Scotia for joining us and sharing how waste diversion is powering climate action across the province. If this conversation sparked new ideas for your community or business, share this episode and let's keep the dialogue going. And thanks to the province of Nova Scotia and Smart Energy for supporting this podcast. If you haven't already, follow Reimagined Energy wherever you listen so you don't miss a conversation about what's next in Canada's clean energy story. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Maria McGowan, and I'll see you next time.